Imagine a world where the glitz and glamour of Hollywood collide head-on with the unyielding, often unforgiving realm of politics. This isn't just any story. It's a tale of two titans from vastly different worlds clashing over values, beliefs, and the very essence of public discourse. On one side stands Karoline Levitt, a conservative powerhouse whose words cut sharper than any blade. A woman who has mastered the art of turning every verbal jab into an opportunity for triumph. Her opponent? None other than The View, the iconic roundtable of outspoken women known for their unfiltered opinions and knack for stirring controversy. As the scene unfolds, viewers are drawn into what promises to be more than just another heated exchange. It's a cultural battleground that has set social media ablaze. The stakes couldn't be higher as both sides prepare to engage in a war of words centered around none other than Pope Francis, a figure revered worldwide for his compassion and progressive stance on numerous global issues. On one side, we have a young, fiery conservative ready to defend her beliefs with the tenacity of a seasoned warrior. On the other, a panel of seasoned television personalities, armed with years of experience in navigating the choppy waters of public opinion. The anticipation crackles in the air like static electricity before a storm. Studio lights flicker with intensity as the audience buzzes with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Cameras pan across the eager faces, capturing the collective breath-holding moment when anything could happen. The host steps onto the stage, his smile practiced yet tinged with unease, sensing that tonight's episode will be anything but ordinary. "Welcome to The View," he announces, his voice steady despite the palpable tension. Today, we witness a clash of ideals. Karoline Levitt, America's youngest conservative star, versus the formidable panel of The View. Don't look away, the drama starts now. Before diving deeper into this unfolding narrative, take a moment to comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. As the studio lights dim, all eyes turn to the center stage where the host stands, ready to introduce a dialogue that could reshape perceptions and redefine boundaries. Setting the stage. A clash of ideologies. As the studio lights dimmed, casting dramatic shadows across the room, the spotlight zeroed in on the host at center stage. His voice rang out with a blend of excitement and trepidation, setting the tone for what was about to unfold. In tonight's program, we dive into a dialogue about the key issues shaping American society, he declared, his words echoing through the charged atmosphere. Every perspective matters. Let's get started. The audience erupted into enthusiastic applause, cheers mixing with whispers as all eyes turned toward Karoline Levitt and the panel of The View, seated at their respective podiums. Half the audience expected impassioned speeches about compassion, themes often championed by The View. But tonight wasn't going to be business as usual. Instead, the air was thick with anticipation, each viewer leaning forward, phones at the ready to capture history in the making. Karoline Levitt sat poised, her gaze unwavering, exuding confidence that seemed almost palpable. Across from her, the members of The View exchanged knowing glances, their expressions a mix of curiosity and defiance. The host continued, "Tonight, we tackle a subject that has ignited fervent debate: respect for religious figures on the global stage. Specifically, how we address Pope Francis, a man whose influence transcends borders and beliefs." The camera panned quickly between the two sides, capturing the subtle shifts in body language. Karoline's fingers drummed lightly against the podium, a silent cadence underscoring her readiness to engage. The panelists leaned in slightly, their postures mirroring a pack of wolves circling their prey. "Let's begin," the host concluded, stepping back to allow the impending storm to brew. What followed was not merely a discussion. It was a spectacle designed to captivate, provoke thought, and perhaps even incite change. As the first words were spoken, the studio transformed into an arena, each participant armed with rhetoric as sharp as any blade. This was no mere debate. It was a showdown destined to leave an indelible mark on those who bore witness. The opening salvo, The View, strikes first. As the host stepped aside, signaling the start of the debate, the atmosphere in the studio shifted palpably. The opening salvo came swiftly and unexpectedly from Joy Behar, one of The View's most vocal panelists. With a sardonic smile playing at the corners of her mouth, she leaned forward, her voice cutting through the anticipatory silence like a knife. "Karoline," she began, her tone deceptively light but laced with an undercurrent of disdain. "I must say, your recent comments about Pope Francis have raised quite a few eyebrows." The audience stirred, murmurs rippling through the crowd like a wave. Joy pressed on, her words gaining momentum. "You've accused the Pope of being too soft on certain global issues, haven't you? Isn't that akin to questioning centuries of spiritual leadership?" Her question hung in the air, punctuated by a brief pause that allowed the weight of her words to sink in. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the measured voice among the panel, chimed in next. Her tone was calm but firm, carrying the authority of someone who had navigated countless debates. "Karoline, while we appreciate passionate discourse, isn't there a line when it comes to respecting religious figures?" She adjusted her glasses, peering intently at Karoline as if trying to gauge her reaction. After all, the Pope is not just a religious leader but a symbol of hope for millions around the world. Sunny Hostin, sitting poised and elegant beside her colleagues, added her perspective with characteristic precision. "And let's talk about the optics here, Karoline. Mocking the Pope doesn't just undermine his message, it risks alienating entire communities who look to him for guidance and solace." Her words were carefully chosen, each syllable dripping with calculated intent. The camera panned to capture Karoline's expression, revealing a slight tightening of her jaw, though her composure remained otherwise impeccable. The audience, now fully engaged, watched with bated breath as the tension reached a crescendo. Phones were raised en masse, capturing every nuance of the unfolding drama. Cheers and gasps intermingled, creating a cacophony of reactions that underscored the gravity of the moment. The host, visibly sweating under the pressure of managing such a volatile situation, attempted to interject. "Ladies, let's try to keep this civil," he pleaded, his voice barely audible over the rising tide of emotion in the room. But his plea went largely unheeded as the panelists, emboldened by their initial success, pressed their advantage. Joy, seizing the moment, delivered a parting shot that reverberated through the studio. "Karoline, if you're going to challenge the Pope, you'd better be prepared to face the consequences." Her words were met with a mixture of applause and disapproving murmurs, the audience clearly divided in their sympathies. As the dust settled from this verbal barrage, all eyes turned to Karoline Leavitt. Would she falter under the pressure or rise to meet the challenge head-on? The stage was set, and the world watched with rapt attention, waiting for her response. Karoline's counterattack, turning the tide. The studio fell into an anticipatory hush, the kind of silence that precedes a storm. Karoline Leavitt stood tall, her posture unyielding as she took a deliberate step forward. Her eyes locked onto Joy Behar, then swept across the panel, each gaze meeting theirs with an unspoken challenge. The audience, phones still aloft, leaned forward collectively, sensing that the tide was about to turn. "Respect is earned, not given blindly," Karoline began, her voice smooth but edged with steel. The words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate, as if she were carving them into the fabric of the debate itself. "When it comes to leadership, spiritual or otherwise, the measure of a person isn't their title but their actions. Pope Francis has indeed been a beacon of hope for many, but leadership also demands accountability. If we cannot question decisions made on the global stage, then we risk stagnation. Blind reverence helps no one." The audience erupted, a mix of cheers and gasps rippling through the crowd. Some raised their phones higher, capturing every word, while others whispered urgently to their neighbors. Karoline's delivery was flawless, calm, measured, and utterly unshakable. She paused for effect, letting her opening statement sink in, before shifting her focus to Whoopi Goldberg. "Miss Goldberg," Karoline continued, her tone respectful but firm, "you spoke of a line when it comes to respecting religious figures. I agree. There is a line. But it's not drawn by fear of backlash or the desire to avoid controversy. It's drawn by truth and integrity. Questioning does not equate to mocking. Criticism, when rooted in fact and principle, is not an attack. It's a call for reflection. If the Pope's actions align with his teachings, then my questions should pose no threat." Whoopi's brow furrowed slightly, her measured composure wavering for the briefest of moments. Karoline didn't give her time to recover. "If anything," she pressed, her voice rising slightly, "it's the refusal to ask hard questions that undermines respect. Leaders, whether they wear a collar or sit in the Oval Office, are meant to serve, and service requires accountability." Turning her attention to Sunny Hostin, Karoline's demeanor shifted subtly, her tone taking on a razor-sharp edge. "Ms. Hostin mentioned optics," she said, her lips curling into a faint but unmistakable smile. "Let's talk about optics, shall we? Mockery implies ridicule without substance. My statements about Pope Francis are backed by data and context, things conspicuously absent from much of the commentary we've heard today. If the optics you're referring to involve silencing dissenting voices to maintain an illusion of harmony, then perhaps we need to redefine what respect truly looks like." The audience roared in approval, their energy electric. Younger viewers in the back rows began chanting her name softly at first, then louder, until it echoed through the studio. The camera caught a young woman holding up a hastily scribbled sign that read, "Karoline for Truth." Sunny, visibly unsettled, attempted to interject. "But Karoline, the way you frame your critiques can alienate." "I'm not here to coddle sensibilities," Karoline interrupted, her voice ringing out like a clarion call. "I'm here to speak plainly, because the American people deserve clarity. Alienation occurs when leaders fail to listen, not when citizens demand accountability. If my words sting, perhaps it's because the truth often does." The panelists exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence beginning to waver. Joy tried to regain control, her voice tinged with frustration. "You're deflecting, Karoline. You're twisting our points to suit your narrative." Karoline tilted her head slightly, her smile sharpening. "Twisting? No, Ms. Bihar, I'm reframing. There's a difference. Your narrative relies on emotional appeals and assumptions. Mine is built on facts and principles. If that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe it's time to reconsider what you're defending." The audience erupted again, this time with deafening applause. Phones flashed like strobe lights as viewers scrambled to capture the moment. The host, sweat glistening on his forehead, stammered an attempt to interject, but his voice was drowned out by the sheer force of Karoline's momentum. She wasn't done yet. Stepping closer to the panel, her presence commanding every inch of the stage, Karoline delivered her final blow. "You accuse me of mockery, but let's be clear. Mockery is dismissing valid concerns without engaging in meaningful dialogue. That's not my style. If you want to discuss respect, let's start by respecting the intelligence of the people watching tonight. They deserve better than platitudes and deflection." The room shook with applause, the chant of "Karoline, Karoline," growing louder. The panelists sat frozen, their earlier smugness replaced by a mix of disbelief and unease. Karoline Leavitt had not only weathered their initial barrage, but had turned it into a rallying cry for accountability, truth, and unflinching courage. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: Karoline had seized the upper hand. The escalation, a battle of convictions. The studio, already electric with tension, seemed to vibrate with an almost tangible energy as Karoline's rebuttal sent shockwaves through the panel. Joy Behar, her earlier smugness faltering, leaned forward, her fingers gripping the edge of the table like a lifeline. "Karoline," she began, her voice tinged with frustration, "you talk about accountability, but aren't you just deflecting? You're accusing the Pope of failing on global issues while ignoring the broader context of his work." Karoline's eyes narrowed slightly, her expression unreadable, but her stance unwavering. "Deflecting?" she echoed, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "No, Ms. Bahar, I'm clarifying. Accountability isn't about cherry-picking convenient truths. It's about addressing inconsistencies. If the Pope advocates for peace but remains silent on specific human rights abuses, then yes, that deserves scrutiny. Compassion without action is hollow, and leadership without accountability is negligence." The audience, now fully invested, erupted into a cacophony of cheers and jeers. Phones were thrust skyward, capturing every word as if the fate of the nation hung in the balance. Whoopi Goldberg, attempting to regain some semblance of control, interjected, "Karoline, you're talking about principles, but don't you think tone matters? The way you critique could alienate those who might otherwise agree with you." Karoline turned her piercing gaze to Whoopi, her voice softening ever so slightly but retaining its razor-sharp edge. "Tone policing is a luxury we can't afford when lives are at stake. Yes, diplomacy has its place, but so does honesty. If my tone offends, perhaps it's because the truth often does. Should I soften my words to spare feelings, or should I speak plainly to spur action?" The audience roared in approval, their applause thunderous and unrelenting. A group of younger viewers in the back began chanting, "Speak the truth." Their voices rose above the din, a rallying cry that seemed to energize Karoline further. Sunny Hostin, visibly flustered, attempted to pivot. "But Karoline, isn't there a difference between critique and outright mockery? You've accused the Pope of being too soft, which many see as disrespectful." Karoline's smile returned, this time tinged with something akin to pity. "Mockery suggests ridicule without substance. My critiques are rooted in facts and context, something conspicuously absent from much of the commentary here today. If calling out hypocrisy is mockery, then perhaps we need to redefine what respect means. Respect isn't about shielding leaders from criticism. It's about holding them to the standards they claim to uphold." The panelists exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier confidence crumbling under the weight of Karoline's relentless logic. Joy, desperate to regain the upper hand, raised her voice. "You're twisting our arguments to fit your narrative, Karoline. That's not accountability, that's manipulation." Karoline's laughter cut through the tension like a blade, sharp and unexpected. "Twisting? No, Ms. Bahar. I'm reframing. There's a difference. Your arguments rely on emotional appeals and assumptions. Mine are built on facts and principles. If that makes you uncomfortable, then perhaps it's time to confront why." The audience erupted once more, their cheers shaking the very foundations of the studio. Phones flashed like strobe lights, capturing every moment of this verbal sparring match. The host, beads of sweat now streaming down his face, tried to intervene. "Ladies, let's keep this civil," he pleaded, his voice barely audible over the chaos. But Karoline wasn't done. She stepped closer to the panel, her presence commanding every inch of the stage. "You accuse me of mockery, but let's be clear. Mockery is dismissing valid concerns without engaging in meaningful dialogue. That's not my style. If you want to discuss respect, let's start by respecting the intelligence of the people watching tonight. They deserve better than platitudes and deflection." The room shook with applause, the chant of "Karoline! Karoline!" growing louder. The panelists sat frozen, their earlier confidence replaced by a mix of disbelief and unease. Karoline Leavitt had not only dismantled their arguments, but had turned the debate into a masterclass in rhetorical precision. The battle lines were drawn, and Karoline stood firmly on the side of truth, unyielding and unapologetic. The media firestorm, social media, erupts. As the cameras cut to commercial, the live broadcast may have paused, but the real show was just beginning online. Within minutes, the hashtag #KarolineTruth began trending globally, sparking a firestorm of memes, posts, and videos dissecting every moment of the explosive confrontation. clips of Karoline's sharpest retorts. "Respect is earned, not given blindly, and compassion without action is hollow," were sliced, diced, and remixed into TikTok dances, Instagram reels, and YouTube analyses. One viral video showed a teenager mimicking Karoline's steely gaze and deadpan delivery, captioned, "When you tell The View to check their facts." It amassed 2 million views within hours. On X, formerly Twitter, users flooded the platform with hot takes. A popular meme depicted Joy Behar mid-sentence, her mouth forming a perfect O of disbelief, with the caption, "When Karoline Leavitt schools you live on national TV." Another image showed Karoline mid-gesture, her finger pointed decisively at the panel, captioned, "That's how you take down a room full of seasoned pros." The post garnered over 500,000 likes and counting. Conservative influencers seized the moment, dubbing Karoline the truth warrior, while progressive critics dismissed her as reckless, but admitted her performance was undeniably captivating. Fox News wasted no time capitalizing on the moment. In a primetime segment titled "Karoline versus The View, a Victory for Accountability," commentators praised her as a breath of fresh air in political discourse. One analyst declared, "Karoline didn't just win the debate, she exposed the disconnect between elite media narratives and the concerns of everyday Americans." Meanwhile, MSNBC struck a more critical tone, labeling her rhetoric divisive, but conceding that her command of the stage was undeniable. Progressive outlets like the Young Turks and Now This scrambled to analyze the fallout. "Love her or hate her, Karoline Leavitt knows how to dominate a conversation," wrote one journalist, while another noted, "She's weaponized social media in ways traditional media can't compete with." Even CNN, typically cautious in its coverage, ran a headline, "Karoline Leavitt takes down The View, a lesson in modern media warfare." Young conservatives rallied behind Karoline, launching campaigns like #SpeakLikeKaroline, urging peers to engage in fearless dialogue. College campuses buzzed with discussions, and student groups organized watch parties to dissect her tactics. Memes comparing her to historical figures like Joan of Arc, the Millennial Crusader, and Margaret Thatcher, Iron Lady 2.0, spread like wildfire. One particularly creative TikTok trend featured users reenacting her takedown of The View, complete with makeshift podiums and dramatic lighting. Not everyone was celebrating. Progressive celebrities weighed in, with Mark Ruffalo tweeting, "While I disagree with her politics, Karoline's ability to connect with young people is impressive and concerning." Others, like Jamila Jamil, expressed frustration. "Why are we amplifying someone who mocks religious leaders?" Yet their critiques were drowned out by the sheer volume of support for Karoline, whose followers grew exponentially overnight. By dawn, the debate had transcended the confines of the studio, becoming a cultural phenomenon. Karoline herself posted a cryptic tweet. "Respect isn't silence, it's dialogue. Thank you, The View, for the opportunity to speak truth to power." The post received 3 million likes and sparked another wave of memes, including one of her walking away from the panel, superhero style, with the caption, "And justice for all." As the dust settled, one thing was clear. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just a participant in the debate. She was the architect of its aftermath. What began as a clash of ideologies had morphed into a referendum on modern discourse, leaving an indelible mark on the intersection of politics, media, and culture. The aftermath. A legacy. Cemented. The echoes of Karoline Leavitt's confrontation with The View reverberated far beyond the confines of the studio, leaving an indelible mark on both her career and the broader landscape of American media and politics. For Karoline, the debate was more than a victory. It was a coronation. Overnight, she transitioned from a relatively niche conservative commentator to a household name, hailed as a fearless voice for accountability and unflinching truth. Invitations poured in from major networks, political organizations, and even late-night talk shows eager to capitalize on her newfound fame. Young conservatives, inspired by her unapologetic approach, began referring to her as the Iron Mike, a nod to her ability to wield words like a weapon. Political analysts speculated that her performance could pave the way for a Senate run or even a White House bid in the future. For The View, however, the aftermath was less triumphant. The panelists, once untouchable icons of daytime television, faced a rare moment of vulnerability. Critics accused them of appearing out of touch, their arguments dismissed as performative rather than substantive. Ratings for the show dipped temporarily as younger audiences flocked to platforms like TikTok and X, where Karoline's soundbites dominated the discourse. A prominent Hollywood Reporter article titled, "The View's Blind Spot: Why Karoline Leavitt Won the War," argued that the show's reliance on emotional appeals and celebrity gravitas had left it ill-equipped to handle a challenger as data-driven and rhetorically precise as Karoline. While the panelists attempted to regroup in subsequent episodes, their interactions carried an uncharacteristic hesitancy, as if wary of reigniting the same firestorm. The broader implications of the debate extended into the realms of media and politics, exposing a generational divide in how discourse is conducted. Traditional outlets like CNN and MSNBC struggled to reconcile their role as gatekeepers of information with the decentralized, unfiltered nature of social media, where Karoline's supporters had effectively hijacked the narrative. Fox News, meanwhile, doubled down on its embrace of digital-first strategies, citing Karoline's success as proof that authenticity resonates more than polished rhetoric. Progressive voices lamented the polarization exacerbated by the clash, arguing that such confrontations only deepen societal divides. Yet even they couldn't deny the shift in power dynamics. The era of moral lectures from elite media personalities was giving way to a new paradigm, one defined by direct engagement, unfiltered messaging, and a willingness to challenge sacred cows. Karoline's impact was felt most acutely among younger generations, who saw in her a blueprint for navigating an increasingly fragmented media landscape. High school and college students began organizing workshops on effective communication, using her debate tactics as case studies. Political science professors incorporated clips of her performance into their curricula, framing it as a textbook example of rhetorical dominance. Meanwhile, memes and hashtags ensured her legacy lived on in internet lore, immortalizing her as both a cultural icon and a symbol of resistance against perceived elitism. As weeks turned into months, the debate became a touchstone for discussions about the future of American discourse. For Karoline Leavitt, it was a defining moment that elevated her to the status of a movement leader. For The View, it served as a humbling reminder of the evolving expectations of their audience. And for the nation, it underscored the growing chasm between traditional authority and the rising voices demanding transparency, accountability, and unfiltered truth. The stage was set for a new era, one where the rules of engagement were rewritten and the players were determined to leave their mark. Lessons learned. Bridging divides through authentic dialogue. The showdown between Karoline Leavitt and The View offers profound lessons for anyone navigating the complex intersection of media, politics, and public discourse. At its core, the debate underscores the transformative power of authentic communication. Karoline's success wasn't merely a product of her sharp rhetoric or mastery of social media. It stemmed from her ability to articulate a clear, principled stance while connecting directly with her audience. Her unapologetic commitment to speaking truth to power, even in the face of fierce opposition, resonated deeply with viewers who crave transparency and accountability. For those seeking to emulate her impact, the takeaway is clear. Authenticity trumps polish every time. Rather than relying on rehearsed talking points or emotional appeals, effective communicators must prioritize substance and sincerity, ensuring their message aligns with the values and concerns of their audience. Equally important is the role of preparation and adaptability. Karoline's ability to dismantle the views arguments stemmed from her deep understanding of the issues at hand and her readiness to pivot in real time. Whether addressing critiques of Pope Francis or countering accusations of mockery, she demonstrated the importance of staying grounded in facts while remaining flexible enough to respond to unforeseen challenges. This duality, preparation paired with adaptability, is a blueprint for navigating high-stakes conversations, whether in politics, business, or personal interactions. However, the debate also highlights the dangers of polarization when dialogue devolves into confrontation. While Karoline's performance was undeniably compelling, it also underscored the risks of entrenching opposing sides in their respective camps. For genuine progress to occur, discourse must move beyond winning arguments to fostering mutual understanding. This requires humility, active listening, and a willingness to find common ground, even with those who hold opposing views. As we reflect on this pivotal moment, let us carry forward the lessons it imparts. Speak boldly but authentically, prepare rigorously but remain adaptable, and always strive to elevate the conversation rather than deepen divides. If this story inspires you to engage more thoughtfully in dialogue, share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the dynamic world of media, politics, and culture. Together, we can shape a future where truth and understanding prevail.